Hey, what's good, everyone? It's Kyle Henderson along with Joseph Hastings. Let's get right into it. Julian Sayin, um, big time prospect, quarterback. You had a chance to recently see him, wanted to visit with you, get some thoughts about his overall delivery, his playing style, his recruitment. Why don't you start off by telling us what you saw from him down at Fort Lauderdale recently?
Yeah, so I had an opportunity to see Julian Sayin, Alabama's 2024 quarterback commit at the Battle Miami 7-on-7 tournament. It's called Battle Miami, but like you said, it took place in Fort Lauderdale. And the first thing that jumped out about me when seeing Sayin is just how tall he is. I always remember people were talking about him and the picture of Coach Saban that he tweeted out last year and how kind of small he looked in comparison to some other 2024 quarterbacks and just quarterback prospects in general. But seeing him in person, he looks like a legitimate 6'2", 6'3" with cleats on. Definitely a lot taller than I expected. And when I first met him, he was facing away from me, so I couldn't see his face. I couldn't tell that it was him. I didn't even actually think that it was him because of how tall he was. So that was the first thing that really popped out to me. But just watching him and his delivery, his mechanics, his fundamentals, his footwork, everything just seemed to be fundamentally sound from what I was able to gauge. I saw 3 full games of his. You look at his footwork there. Very in control in the pocket, doesn't seem too pressured. I know it's a 7-on-7 setting. There's no pads, there's no pass rushers or anything like that, but there is a time clock, a play clock that you have to abide by. And he got the, his passes off with quickness, with velocity, accuracy. This is somebody that I think has all the tools to be a great quarterback at the next level, especially in Alabama's quarterback-friendly system, in which they produce, with Bryce Young, 3 expected first-round draft picks, since the 2020 NFL draft. So, I did really come away impressed with Sayin. He also showed some mobility too, was able to escape outside of the pocket, deliver some passes on the run. That's something that you always want to see, especially in this day and age. And yeah, he got an A grade from me. He was the on-3 MVP of the whole tournament, and that's saying something. There's a lot of top prospects at events like this, and there's multiple 5-stars here, and Sayin was the MVP, and rightfully so, in my opinion.
Here with Joseph Hastings of Bama Insider. You can check out his great work at Bama Insider talking about Julian Sayin. When we talk about his recruitment, recently picked up an offer from Ohio State. Any reason to be concerned there? When we look at, we're far out. I mean, we're only January 23rd of 2023. Any reason to be concerned there when you look at the recruitment? Kind of give us your take on where things stand from a recruitment standpoint.
Yeah, it's really interesting with not only Sayin, but Alabama's 2024 class in general. Because if you cast your mind back this time last year, Alabama had no commits in their 2023 class. Now they have 5 commitments, and multiple prospects. We'll get to a couple of them are taking visits elsewhere. With Sayin, you have to look at him as somebody who could potentially take a visit elsewhere, a visit or 2 elsewhere. At this time, he doesn't have plans to do so, to take an unofficial visit, I should say, because when he's going with his teams to Miami or Baton Rouge, he did go to Miami's campus this past weekend. He may step foot on LSU's campus if they go to a tournament out there. But in terms of just him, taking a plane out, going to a school just on his own, he doesn't have any plans to do so. As for the Ohio State offer, he said that he doesn't have interest in, Ohio State, too much interest in Ohio State, and he doesn't plan on taking the visit there, which I think is pretty encouraging for, Alabama fans, especially with Ohio State. And, you talk about Alabama's quarterback development, but, Ohio State has been able to produce a guy like Justin Fields, and, CJ Stroud is expected to be a top NFL draft pick. So, for Sayin to not really have too much initial interest, I think that's pretty encouraging. It's tough. Kyle, he committed in November, 2022. That means over a year is left between his commitment date and his actual signing in December 2023. So, there's a lot of time there, a lot of time for schools to make a play for him and to continue pursuing him. But he seemed pretty solid with Alabama based off my conversations with him. We had multiple conversations throughout the weekend. He said he's recruiting several guys to Alabama, one of them being his teammate there on the Raw 7-on-7 team, Mazeo Bennett. He recently visited Alabama. He's also recruiting Ellis Robinson, who's on that team. So, he seems pretty locked in with Alabama for the time being.
Here with Joseph Hastings, the Bama Insider, along with Andrew Bone. These guys do a fantastic job covering the Alabama Crimson Tide recruiting scene. I wanted to talk about another prospect that you saw down in Fort Lauderdale recently, and that's Jalen Mbakwe. How did Mbakwe look coming off last season's knee injury? I think a lot of people are curious about his movement, kind of the mobility that he has. What did you see just a few days ago?
I think the most interesting takeaway from my conversation with him and seeing him in person is that Jaylen told me that he did not have surgery on that left knee, which was, it was an expectation that he would, he was planning on doing so, but it ended up not requiring surgery, which is huge. You never want to have surgery, especially on, a part of your body that's really valuable, at the quarterback position. You rely on it so much. So, I thought that was really interesting, but just seeing him in person, you see the clips there. He moves very well. If I didn't tell you all that he had a left knee injury, you probably wouldn't have been able to tell. It seems fully healed. He was moving very well in his back pedals, seemed pretty fluid with his hip movement, had really good ball skills, deflecting multiple passes at the event. It's tough with cornerbacks if you're not being targeted, at camp settings like this to really make a highlight type plays. So you're going to see a lot of those right there, those reels that you're seeing. But for the most part, I thought he did an excellent job of staying in phase, keeping up with receivers. He has really good speed. I think that's kind of the one thing you really didn't get to see from this tournament. I wanted to see him on offense because if you put on his highlight tape, you see a ton of plays of him, making plays out of the slot, making plays outside, making plays in kick return, punt return. That's really kind of his bread and butter, just being an all-around asset for Clay Chalkville High School. But overall, just based on his pure cornerback coverage skills, I think there's a lot to like there. He kind of has that prototypical size, for a cornerback. He's not overly long, not overly tall, but just kind of like, in that right spot, that's that sweet spot that you want there. So I came away impressed from what I saw from him, and he's definitely worthy of that 5-star status that we have for him. He's listed as an athlete on his On3 profile, but he's going to be a cornerback for Alabama at the next level. This was actually my first time seeing him in person. I saw him, last year, got to talk with him, but he wasn't, practicing at that time. I didn't get to see him practice. So it was really great to see Jaylen this past weekend.
Two more things that I wanted to ask you about, Joseph, when we talk about Jalen Mbakwe, taking a visit coming up to LSU. I think that's next weekend, and recently got an offer from Prime out in Colorado, along with Penn State. How solid is Mbakwe with Alabama? And then another follow-up on top of that, how important is it for Alabama to keep Mbakwe in this class? It seems like that's an obvious that he's a must-keep.
Yes, and you mentioned that offer from Colorado. I think you always have to kind of be concerned in this day and age with Dion Sanders, and especially when it comes to cornerback prospects, just the name that he carries and the weight that that carries with him being the head coach there at Colorado. Jaylen told me that it was a great honor to receive an offer from Dion Sanders, but he followed it up by saying that he's fully committed to Alabama, which I once again I think is encouraging for Bama fans. The one thing that he did say is that he may take an official visit to Colorado, but he's nowhere near considering officials at this time. Still a few months left until he can take those. Received an offer from Penn State, doesn't really have too much interest there. We'll be taking that visit to LSU, like you mentioned, but he told me he's enjoying the process, and he's another one of those early commitments, committed in July before his junior season even began. It's really a lot of time between that commitment and the expected signing December of 2023, like was saying. So, it's not a huge surprise that he's taking visits elsewhere. We saw Perry Thompson and Martavius Collins take visits to Auburn earlier this month, the weekend of Alabama's first junior day. And you expect to see this. Kyle, it wasn't too long ago that Justice Haynes was taking a visit to Georgia. Caleb Downs took a visit to Georgia and Ohio State, and Tony Mitchell took officials to Texas A&M and Auburn in the month of December, and they all ended up signing with Alabama. So, the Crimson Tide don't have the no visit policy like some other schools have. They're allowing, their commits to take visits elsewhere, and Jaylen and others are taking advantage of that and enjoying the process, but he's fully solid with Alabama. Your second part of your question is how important is he to Alabama's class? he's massive. He's the number 1 overall prospect in the state of Alabama. He's a really versatile prospect. You're looking at the cornerback highlights for him, but he, like I mentioned before, he's very dynamic in the special teams. In special teams, being able to return punts for touchdowns, kickoffs for big chunks of yardage. I think that's going to be a really valuable asset for Alabama, when he gets there in 2024. So yeah, it's huge for them to keep him in the fold, especially with how many big time programs are after him. And just based on how things are trending, my conversation with him, he seems really locked in with the Crimson Tide right now.
Last prospect I wanted to talk to you about is Perry Thompson, another prospect out of Alabama, 6'3", 205 pounds, at least on his profile page, out of Foley, Alabama. What did you see from him? Committed to Alabama back a long time ago in June the 24th of 2022. Give us your take on Thompson.
Yeah, so you mentioned the height and weight there, 6'3", 205 pounds. Actually looked a little bit bigger than that in terms of weight-wise, but it doesn't necessarily affect him with his route running. You see there, he has really quick feet, able to get off the snap with explosion in his release. It was kind of a tough setting for him just because he was getting open. There were multiple instances where I saw him wide open on deep passes or over the middle of the field, and he just didn't get the ball. There's a lot of talent on the team that he was a part of, Trillion Boys, one of those being Alabama wide receiver target Aaron Hampton. So it's kind of tough to really be able to showcase your skill set fully and get the pass exactly when you need it, which right there, he really wanted that one. Yeah. I thought he did a great job of, stepping his foot into the ground and then breaking out to the outside. And once again, having an explosion off those releases, showed off really great speed for somebody his size. He looks like a tight end. If you didn't know his position beforehand, he legitimately looks like a tight end prospect, but moves like a wide receiver. He's out of Foley High School. That's, a lot of Alabama fans will know that as the home of Julio Jones. He broke Julio Jones' reception record at Foley this past season. He had 87 catches for 1,059 yards. This is a very, very, very strong, solid wide receiver prospect in the class of 2024. And he, in my opinion, he's a top 5 receiver bordering on top 3. So when we talk about important prospects to keep in this class, he's at the top of the list there, or one of the top at the list there, just because of, how dynamic he is and what he can bring, to Alabama's wide receiver room. And as we saw this past season, they need that. They need somebody of his caliber.
Good stuff, Joseph. Well, we appreciate the update from Fort Lauderdale. Check out more coverage on Alabama recruiting. Go to BamaInsider.com. There's some great offers right now. You can get the recruiting coverage from Joseph Hastings along with Andrew Bone. My name's Kyle Henderson, and along with Clint Lamb and Jimmy Stein, we all make up the crew at Bama Insider. Hit the thumbs up, like, and subscribe. It's important that you guys subscribe to these videos so you're notified every single time we drop an update on the Alabama Crimson Tide, whether it's team or recruiting. He's Joseph Hastings. I'm Kyle Henderson. We'll catch you on the next video right here on BamaInsider.com.